Well, hi you. I'm glad you tuned in. Glad that you're with me today. Beth is she's in town. Basically, all of our salons opened up, for nails and all that kind of thing. And so that just happened. And so she's going to be down there for a couple weeks. Hopefully, I'll see her soon after that. I'm just kidding. She's down there having a great time. And we wanted to take a little bit of a break from the 7 kind of marriage monster mistakes because of what's gone on this week. We see a lot being thrown around. We get phone calls about it. We've got people that are saying, hey, what's going on with all this? And can you give us a clue on it? Can you let us know? And so we thought, you know what? Let's talk about this. What Jesus would say to the killer cops out there, what Jesus would say to, the people that have the violent mobs going on, and then really what he'd say to you and me. So I'm not going to take a whole long time here, but I do want to walk you through this. And if you want to kind of take this journey with me, great. If not, I'll miss you, but and I love you. But if you want to go with me on this, it's been a journey this week to say, okay, God, what are you doing? Because for all of us, right, we get very fired up about this. All you had to do is look last night at Minneapolis and the downtown, and all you could see was flames engulfing malls and the police, place. I mean, all this stuff's going on. You're looking and you're going, wow, it's crazy. It's like, man, what's going on out there? And it just was nasty last night. One newscaster called it extreme lawlessness. So everybody's getting all fired up. Like, we're the Avengers out here. We're going to bring justice and fire to this terrible system that's going on, and we're going to get it done. I saw 3 kinds of people out there going for it this week. One of them was, here's what I'd do to those cops. Here's what I'd do to those cops. I got it down. I tell you what I do. I do this, this, and this. This is how I mete out justice. Then there were people out there going, well, let's not talk bad about the blue. The blue really serves us. It's an amazing thing, and so we want them to be there. And so stop it. Stop it. We can take care of this kind of thing. And then there was, of course, the Woodstock singers, come on, people now. Shine on your brother. Everybody get together. Come and love one another right now. So you got that group, right? The Woodstock group just go and bring peace and love. You got people throwing Molotov cocktails. Over here, you've got people saying, we can really work this out in the justice system. And it's just a mad thing. And all of a sudden, people are like law experts, and people are in places really speaking out about their feelings. And there's facts out there that's going on, and there's things that God would really, really want us to know. And so I want to go through those kind of things today. And I'll be honest, I was one of those people too. I started getting my own emotions and feelings going. And when I do that, all of a sudden, I'm putting myself on a Messiah pedestal that I know exactly what would happen and should happen, and then I start waxing eloquent about it, and I think to myself, and God does this really a lot with me, He'll say, Gil, I know that you think you can rock it, and I know that you think that, you'll get all this stuff right, but calm down, and I want to say some things. It's not God's first rodeo in this. Matter of fact, you look through the scriptures, it's like his 20,000th rodeo, maybe more. He is over your family. He's involved in these kind of things that are going on in our communities. He doesn't stutter. He's not whispering about things. He is just straight saying, I love you. It's like looking down at your kids. I have 4 kids. When they were growing up, they'd fight each other all the time. And it'd break my heart. I'd be like, come on. You can do better than that. Let me give you some pointers. Let me help you out in how to have peace with your siblings. And God does the same thing with us. He sees us go to war like this against each other and what's going on, and he goes, hey, slow down. I want you to have peace. So I'm going to talk about what Jesus would say with this kind of heart to the 3 constituents out there today, the killer cops, the violent mob, and then you and me. So let's talk about the killer cops in Minneapolis. My wife, Beth, is from there. And her brother is up there now, and they've got COVID going on. Her sister-in-law is in the hospitals helping out, and it's just going, it's kind of crazy out there. But one thing she said to me that really stuck with me. She said, Gil, when I was living there back in the day, there's been a culture of racism in Minneapolis for a very, very long time. This is nothing new. It's not like some, cop just all of a sudden had his knee on this guy's neck. Those things rarely just occur out of nowhere. Cultures are built and defined, and it's like love. You can't see it, but you can feel it, and you can watch it. Cultures in cities and states and all over the world and in countries And cultures are built and defined. And that's why God says, I want you to pray for your leaders, because if you're not careful, you'll find a culture where people get their necks on curbs and knees come down and they can't breathe and they die. And so God looks at you and me, I was talking about this, and he's like, man, build cultures that are awesome. You can build them in your family, you build them in your companies, you build them in your organizations, you build them all over, you build them in you. And so he's always saying to you and me, go back to the systemic issues. And the systemic issues here are, we've had people that are leading that are not getting that done. Now here's the problem with that, okay? You get killer cops out of a bad culture. You get killer cops out of a bad culture. And all you have to do is watch, right? All you have to do is watch. You have to look at the screen and go, okay, it plays out on TV like it's a joke. So you and me, we all have these people going, F that justice system. I could do a whole lot better than that. And so God says, okay, take a break for a second. You got the White House, you got governors, you got the mayor. Stop. Romans 13, God speaks to people living in an empire, and we're living in an empire. If you ever want to read a great book of the Bible right now, because we're in the United States of America, one of those powerful countries in the world, the most powerful country anybody's ever seen, Rome back in the day was the same way. So when you read the book of Romans, you realize that God is talking to people in an empire culture. So he says, okay, I want you to understand how to process through this. And he doesn't spend a whole lot of time here, but he spends enough time for you and me to kind of grab something. In Romans 13, God talks about how justice happens through government, and how we need to have a healthy fear of, say, the National Guard coming to town. We need to have a healthy fear of what the government can do to keep things right. And in this instance, God's saying, okay, I want you to trust that I've got this, and justice is going to come, and justice needs to happen. It needs to happen. 1 Timothy 2:2, God says, come on, people, pray hard for your leaders, for kings, and for everyone in authority. Why? So that you might live a peaceful and quiet life with the joy of God in your hearts, he says. God says, I want you to be able to lead a peaceful life under really solid leadership in this world where you can grow kids up to become pillars of the community, where you have great family relationships. I mean, God's got this beautiful, beautiful design and standard for all this. And then he says, what's our part as his children? Is to have a healthy respect for government, and it's to pray for people, because it's not an easy job, and get really smart about who you vote for. Get really, really smart about these kinds of things. And God looks at this, killer cop, these four. And his heart would be this, as you read through the book of Romans. God would offer grace to the killer cop, right? The guy with his knee on George Floyd's neck. And he would also want to see justice would be delivered to him so that he would possibly change, and the culture in Minnesota and the rest of the country would change as well. That's what he wants. And what you and I will do is we'll let our emotions get way in front of us. We'll, go for that. We just go with our feelings. We get really crazy. All of a sudden, Molotov cocktails are thrown. Buildings are up in flames. And God says, stop. These are systemic issues. And if you want to see great things happen, you gather with people who want to see great things happen too. And you say, this is a kind of world I want my kids to grow up in. I have 4 children, and one of them came to me recently and said, Dad, why would I ever want to bring a child up in this? He's not very old, but he looks around. He sees the battles and the wars going on among us. He sees that there's massive systemic problems. And he looks at me and goes, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I look at him, I go, let's get back to God's heart on this, okay? Let's get back to God's heart on this. The answers aren't in bitching. The answers are in praying and voting and peacefully protesting. That's where the answer is. That's where it's not in bitching and getting angry and all. You do that and you're just like everybody else out there. You're no better than that cop. You're no better. It's realizing this is not a one-off problem. And Jesus sees this with these killer cops, and he goes, man, I want them to know that I would forgive them, and I'd also want to make sure that the justice was meted out very much in this situation, so that love and truth would prevail, and over time that culture would shift, okay? That's number one. That's what he'd say to those killer cops. Hey, I love you, but I'm a God of justice. and that needs to happen, and I've given that to our government. The word in Romans 13 is makarios. It means the sword. It means God brings that area into being so that there are people, I mean, you know this. Have you ever had rotten parents and kids grow up to be just a-holes, right? So God, same thing. That happens in governments. And you want to make sure that it grows really, really well, all right? That's the first thing. Second thing, Jesus would talk to the violent mob. He would. When I was in Afghanistan a few years ago, helping rebuild schools and healthcare facilities, that place had been blown away back to like the 1500s. That country was level. So our team, there's about 15 of us, had protection in our guest house. We were going out every day that it was safe to go out and helping refugees in Afghanistan, just outside of Kabul. And we were given bodyguards. And they were they were very big. Most of them were Pakistanis, and you get to become friends with them. And I became really good friends with one of them. And so we were like Christians in a very much a Muslim country. And so my Pakistani friend, he's also a bus driver for us. He drove our van around. He was a big guy. He was taller, but he was not quite as good looking as me. Just kidding. He far outdistanced me there, but we're just chatting it up, and he's over here driving and I'm over here, and he says, Gil, explain to me that grace thing you talk about all the time. He goes, I'm a Muslim and I'm fascinated by this thing called grace. And I said, okay. So I told him about it. I told him you got nothing to offer God, and on your worst days, God still calls you by name to come near to him and be loved. Like I said, like explosive love. Like explosive, extravagant, amazing love. That on your worst days, and I just kind of walked through some things with him around that. And I said that no matter what, when you look up to Jesus, God showers you with grace, right? So he turns to me with tears in his eyes. And I said, sir, you're driving, be careful. But he was so wrapped up in this. And he looked at me and he goes, we don't have that grace thing here in our country. Never heard of it. He goes, here it's an eye for an eye. You touch my stuff and the war is on. He goes, that's all we know. And that's all we've known for centuries is an eye for an eye. You steal my pencil. You put your hands on my stuff. You do anything that come at me, I am coming back at you. That's how this is going to work. And he was just very, very honest about it with me. And he had tears in his eyes and he goes, I would do anything to be able to live out this grace thing you talk about through Jesus. I mean, he was just... And he goes, look around, he goes, everybody, all these dudes that I'm with, I mean, they had all had AK-47s, AK-15s. They were very large Pakistanis. And he goes, all of us have grown up and been a part of something that has absolutely destroyed not only our country, but our souls. Because we don't know how to do the grace thing. It's not a part of our religion. It's not a part of anything that we do. It was the best conversation I had there because he was so ready to rest from war. You could tell he was just fatigued. He was just tired of it. When we were driving by IEDs, we drove by places every day where later on in the news you'd hear got bombed and people died. It was just nonstop. And he was looking at me going, man, we're tired here. There's no grace. We're just tired. We're just tired. So I read 2 passages of scripture to him while we were driving to our spot. Matthew 11:28-30, where Jesus says, stop your battles and come to me. And hey, you weary ones, I'll give you rest. You weary ones, I'll give you rest. And I was reading that scripture to him, and he lost it. He's, 6'6", and he absolutely lost it. And it was very, very powerful in that time because, he experienced a little bit of what explosive grace could look like. And what it's like to live with extravagant grace bursting out of all over your heart. Everything changes. And right away, your life turns in a different direction. That's what happens when you confront and bump into Jesus and the grace he offers. It just changes everything. And people that are really tired kind of break down and cry. And Jesus says, you're going to do that. Because I offer something no one else offers, and that is just rest for your soul. And I mean, this guy was just like, that's everything I want right now. And so you start to see the world through God's eyes. Everyone deserves to be loved like you are because God really likes to recklessly love his kids. And when you let him, you're free and you get to blossom like springtime daisies. I mean, things happen when the cultures are built around grace and truth. It just happens that way. And so here comes this meaning and purposeful living, right? And that's why in Matthew 5:28-32, Jesus says, this whole eye for an eye thing, this whole tooth for a tooth thing, that's over. That's over. It is no more. Eye for an eye thing and that tooth for a tooth thing, he says in Matthew 5:28-32, he goes, that is done. That is never to be spoken of. It's never to happen. You're supposed to bring grace on this. And then, someone sent to me this amazing clip a couple of days ago from 4 guys who looked like skinheads. They're up in Minneapolis. They were in a mall. And to be honest, they looked really scary. They had very robust beards, kind of like ZZ Top runs into Duck Dynasty, or I don't know what it would be, but these guys were just kick-ass guys in their 20s, and they had rifles, and they were standing outside a key store in the mall to protect it, and other stores too. If I didn't know any better, I didn't have the sound on, I'd be like, wow, those guys are dangerous, everybody go home. They were actually what I call peace mercenaries. They were peace mercenaries in that they went to that mall to protect it. 4 guys, they looked at each other and they said, we got to get down there. And what I loved about these 4 guys was that they were very well thought. They understood what they were doing. They were huge-hearted guys. And the one leader of that whole thing, and I mean, these flames were being just engulfing that entire place behind him. And all these violent looters and the violent mob was going on. And you know what he said? They said it like Jesus said it, with flames, going on all around him. They said, we absolutely agree with protesting this sick death of George Floyd. We absolutely agree with it. There needs to be protests. There needs to be people, making sure that we're being heard, that this is not the culture we want to have here in this empire that we live in this state. And he goes, this is not what we want to do. He goes, this guy, George Floyd, think about it. He pays taxes to pay for that cop's salary that killed him. That guy, George Floyd, who's just, everything I've heard about him is very, very cool, He goes, this guy put money in the kitty to pay that cop's salary so he could kill him. So that dude, right? That dude's got it. He's sitting there with his AK-15 and he's with his buddies and he goes, that needs to be protested. That's a sick culture and it needs to change and needs to change now. And we need to get that figured out, right? We need to pray. We need to protest and we need to vote. Pray, peacefully protest, vote. That's it. That's it. And he goes, that's what we need to be doing. So he goes, we're protesting all the way. And then he goes, but this stuff going on, this arson and looting thing, he goes, this is just bullshit. Excuse the expression if you got a child there. He said, this is bullshit. This stuff going on here, he goes, then we're no better. We're no better than that cop. We're no better. This is not the way to do it. I mean, you can just tell. He's like, and that's why we're down here, because we're just like that cop when this happens, and we're no better than that cop. And then he got me all fired up because he was spot on. He was spot on. I mean, Jesus says it, right? He says, you've heard that if someone punches your eye out and the process goes all Conor McGregor on you and breaks your teeth so you're spitting them on the ground, you're supposed to go find that guy and beat the crap out of them. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That is not what Jesus says. It's not what Jesus says. He says that's actually not cool. If somebody body slams you to the ground Hulk style and knocks your eyeball out and then your teeth out, you go find them and, you ready? Seek justice for their actions peacefully while you offer them forgiveness and love. So I tell people, you can't live this life without the Holy Spirit in you. Like, there's no way. You don't have the power to do this kind of thing right here. And Jesus says, with me in your life, you can. You seek justice for these people because they need it and and they need to grow and change, and so does our government. Everything out there needs to have a brand new culture. You pray for that. You seek out justice, and then you become forgiving and grace-led with them. Whether they change or not, it does not ruin you. You just love them, he says, and I'll sort them out in the end. You love him and I'll sort it out in the end. So say it again with me, okay? And write it down on a place all over your house. You know what the Jews did? They would come home every night and they had scriptures tacked to their doorways. So they were always reminded of these things that God has, right? They always were reminded of it because they knew they could get away from it really fast and their feelings would run out in front and they get just blasted and their entire homes would change. So they said, look, they would tape, and it says, verses all over. They knew the scriptures. They actually tied them to their foreheads in little, carriers to show to remember what God said because they lived in a very, very tough, way tougher than ours. They lived in a really, really brutal time and they wanted to make sure they walked with God. So just say it with me, okay? Okay, ready? I'm going to say it. We're going to say a couple things. I'm going to pray, I'm going to peacefully protest, and I'm going to vote. And we're going to see this thing change from the ground level. I'm going to pray, I'm going to peacefully protest, and I'm going to vote. And then I'm going to, here it is, ready? Here it is. 3 words: justice, forgiveness, and love. Justice, forgiveness, and love. 1 Timothy 2:12, Matthew 5:38, Romans 13. This is what God would say. It's what he would say. Seek justice, forgiveness, and love. He's saying take all your rifles out of your weapons closet. Take them all out of your weapons closet. So I just want to close with this, and we'll wrap this up. But back in 2012, you remember Newtown, the Sandy Hook massacre, where 26 people were murdered by a guy named I'll come up with it. So Adam Lanza. Lanza. And he had just shot his mom in the head, killed her at his home, and then he went over to this grade school in Newtown, and he started mowing down kids that were between the ages of 5 and 10. And he mowed down some administrators, teachers, and all that, but he took out 20 children between the ages of 5 and 10. And Scarlett Lewis was the mom of this little feisty boy named Jesse, who was in a classroom, and little Jesse got murdered. And she said that just before Jesse died, really interesting, she said, he went downstairs and he had a whiteboard down there and he wrote these 3 words on this whiteboard before he went to school. And the 3 words were nurturing, healing, and love. Nurturing, healing, and love. Kind of like justice, forgiveness, and love, right? 3 words, God says. This little boy, his mom said this. She goes, I don't know where he got it. I don't know what was going on with him, that he knew this. But she had a feeling that God was penning these 3 words on that whiteboard through him. Nurturing, healing, and love. And when she'd read those words, she was positive God had Jesse write them down. And that way she wouldn't die herself of bitterness and rage. She goes, and by the way, this is human, right? She goes, there were days that I was absolutely on my knees, so bitter and angry and rage-filled for that kid, Adam Lanza. I would have done anything to wipe him off the map. And so God would have me get off my knees and go downstairs and get in front of that whiteboard and pray and ask God what he'd have her do. Because she had other children and she wanted to live. She did not want this poison to kill her toward this guy, Adam Lanza. She did not want that to happen. So she would go downstairs. God would just lovingly take her downstairs, right? And she would stand in front of the whiteboard. Those words have not been erased, by the way, in 8 years. Because that whiteboard kept her alive. What Jesse wrote on there kept her alive. Her little 7-year-old wrote, nurturing, healing, and love. And she would go stand and kneel before that whiteboard, knowing that God had sent those words to him before he went off to school so his mom and family could be change agents in this area. She didn't throw Molotov cocktails. She didn't go down to some police station and bring a rifle. She prayed, right? And she remembers, she goes, Jesus says, if no one stops this eye for an eye thing and a tooth for a tooth thing and this smack you upside the head thing he talks about too. It's your eyeball out, it's your teeth you're spitting out, and then it's somebody bad, like Mike Tyson's, your face. And God says, okay, at some point, right, this war will have to end because you're living in Scoretownville. And as long as you're living in Scoreboard and Scoretownville, then what ends up happening is when you want everything to be even, you're going to make it even. And God says you're going to get even and you're going to pay back until it's even and all these kind of things. And God goes, who's going to be the first to stop that and offer justice, forgiveness, and love? And nurturing, healing, and love. Who's going to do that? You and me. Because God says that's what I want you to do. And God just says, okay, the wars will never end. Someone has to go first. The wars will never end unless someone goes first. We won't have any peace until you throw out the scorecard. We won't have any peace until you stop getting even. As my Pakistani 6-7-inch Pakistani bus driver friend said to me, I was hanging out with him for quite a while, we've never heard of this thing called grace. We just live under payback and get even. That's all we know. That's what our religion teaches. And that was so great to be able to say he did. He goes, does Jesus give us any hope in that? And I said, yes. He's waiting for the first person to say, I'm done with getting even. I offer justice, forgiveness, and love. And you do it in a way that brings amazing life to your town, to your county, to your state, to your nation, and to the world. Somebody has to go first. And I'm shaken, but I'm in. I am all in. Are you? Put down your sword. God's got that. God's got that. And you pray, and you peacefully protest, and you vote. And you offer grace and love. You offer nurturing and healing and love, like little Jesse said. And that's how you change the world. So his mom, Scarlett, when she was praying in front of that whiteboard one day, God put this on her heart. She started the Jesse Lewis Choose Love Foundation. She didn't go lob a Molotov cocktail. She went and got busy bringing love to the world. And there's this nonprofit, called the Jesse Lewis Choose Love Foundation, using those 3 words to promote social and emotional education in schools, as well as a consistent message of compassion in our communities. So it's ragingly successful, right? And Scarlett Lewis then won the International Forgiveness Award. She didn't go light up a police station. She decided to offer forgiveness and grace and love and justice and healing and nurturing. She offered all that, built this awesome nonprofit, and got the International Forgiveness Award. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. So here's what Jesus would say to you, and we'll close out. You have your foot on someone's neck right now, probably, who's hurt you, okay? You do. You have your foot on someone's neck. Maybe it's an ex, a mom or dad, or a brother and sister. Maybe it's a boss or a coworker. Maybe it's your husband or wife. Some of you right now who have your foot on someone's neck and they can't breathe, Jesus would say, go first. Go first. Slowly take your foot off of their neck and be free. Slowly take your foot off of their neck and be free. So I want you to think about who that is for you and how later on today, before you go to bed, you will go first. And you'll grab your own little whiteboard and you'll throw those words up there. Justice, forgiveness, love, nurturing, healing love. You'll write whatever your words are, and you'll pray and say, God, burst this forth in my life so that I can bring peace to the world and not get even. Because I want to get even. And you know what? Yeah, me too, okay? Me too. I want payback. I want that person to feel my pain. I want to throw down. I am red freaking blooded male alpha. I want that. You know? And God says to me, stop. Someone has to go first. Slowly take your foot off of their neck and be free. George Floyd's brother said yesterday, he said this, I've already forgiven that cop. My heart is clean. And now I want to see justice for those killer cops. I want to see, he wasn't going crazy. He just looked into the camera and said, my heart is clean. I want justice for them. I will pray for God's end. I'm going first. And that forgiveness does not mean there's no justice. As a matter of fact, forgiveness means justice. And that needs to take place. And so he said, I'm in for both grace and love and that. And so my thing to you as we wrap up here is, are you? Are you? Choose love. So go kill that forgiveness thing this weekend, okay? Love you very much.